Welcome back to Citizens Forum for segment 3 today. And today we have with us Dermod Travis. He's the Executive Director of IntegrityBC, and Dermod has just had published in several prestigious publications his article around the reports and the financing of the Site C dam. And the Times columnist just ran the article last week. The province has now run it, and also the Huffington Post. So there's a lot of interest in your analysis of what's happened here, and I think some of these reports have played a fairly major role in the government's decision making. That everything's lining up well, and financially this is going to be coming in on budget. So basically, I think with your analysis, you came up with perhaps there might be some questions as to whether or not this is all going to work. So basically, I think the first thing we should look at is, do you think that these people that have provided these reports are, let's say, independent of the interests of BC Hydro?
Well, I think that the BC government and BC Hydro went shopping for reports that they would like in order to justify their decision to proceed with Site C. And it's important to remember that Site C has never gone to the BC Utilities Commission for a proper appraisal. And so in December 2014, week before Christmas, the government decided that it was going to go ahead with Site C, and it wanted to have all of the little documents that it could put out as a substitute almost for going to the BC Utilities Commission. And what's kind of funny about that is that there really are 6 key individuals who are behind all of the due diligence, and they use the term frequently, all the external peer reviews that the government issued that week. And one of them literally a week before Christmas. And only one of the 6 was actually named. And he lives in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. His name's Mark Gilbert.
Right.
He does have experience in the area that he wrote his report, 30 years of experience. He also has a sideline. He runs a small property development firm in Broken Arrow where he buys distressed houses, renovates them, and sells them. And he wrote a 12-page report. Now, the government didn't release the report. They only cited a couple of lines from it in their news release. And in the news release, they talked about the fact that he, Mark Gilbert, had found they had state-of-the-art technologies, methodologies for forecast demands into the future.
Right.
Well, his report didn't exactly say that. And it did talk about you have state-of-the-art methodologies, but you also have a problem because your peak forecast 20 years out might not be accurate and may only be valid for the first 10 years, not the second 10 years. So that's one thing that's important.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really critical for people to know is he did not have the authority. It was defined as being out of scope to his work to actually validate BC Hydro's numbers.
Okay.
So he simply had to take a set of numbers and say, yeah, maybe, but not determine whether those numbers are accurate. Now, in 2015, a few months later, someone, I don't know who, filed an access to information request to get the names of the other 5 people. Now, I think it's kind of funny that you actually have to go that far to get 5 names. And I looked at the response that he was given in July of 2015, which did in fact have all of the names of all of the individuals, with massive pages redacted. You know, page 8 to 16, redacted. Page 24 to 28, redacted. And I actually happen to have the full documents, so I know what they've redacted, what they haven't redacted. And what I think is really amusing about it is that some of the stuff that the BC government redacted, anybody tonight, this afternoon, on Google,
should just find that out.
They'll be able to find it in a second.
Yeah.
It's not a state secret. But of the other 5 individuals, one of them works for KPMG, 4 of them were independent construction experts to give a second opinion on hydro BC Hydro's estimate for the cost of Site C.
Okay, so firstly, who's KPMG?
KPMG is a massive international accounting firm. It's been in the
Okay.
news a great
Okay.
deal related to offshore tax
Right.
havens. BC Hydro went to somebody by the name of Frank Margotan
Yeah.
to set up a panel, third-party review of all of their cost estimates.
Yeah.
Frank Margotan is retired. He used to be the vice president of Peter Kiewit and Sons, major construction North American firm.
Okay.
He was responsible, point man, for the Sea to Sky Highway project and the Portman Bridge. It's on his CV, it's in the BC Hydro bio that they put out on him after the access to information request.
Right.
He then went out and found 3 other people. Now, one of them in the BC Hydro material is identified as also having once worked for Kiewit.
Okay.
But one of them is not identified as having worked for Kiewit. So Frank Margotan found 2 other people, including himself, 3 individuals who have together 80 years of work experience at Kiewit and Sons.
Okay.
The 4th person actually had a couple of years bit part with Kiewit. This is not an independent panel. This is the old boys network.
They all have known each other previously.
They've all known each other. They do not strike me as the type of individuals who would take a stand and say, no, this is wrong. This is, let's get along panel.
Yeah.
Now they went to Gary Webster, KPMG, partner at KPMG. He's not an accountant. He's an engineer, to sign off both on BC Hydro's cost estimates, but also on the third-party review. And it's a glowing 2-page letter, lavish with praise. You would be left thinking that this was the gospel.
Just breathtaking.
Breathtaking.
How good an idea
Personally,
it is.
I think a company as large as KPMG could have sprung for a 3-page letter. And in that 3 pages, Gary Webster should have added, as you know, I've worked with Frank Margotan for more than 10 years.
Okay.
And I can attest to,
Yeah.
he didn't point that out in his letter, that he knows Frank Margotan well.
So, as you say, I mean, to review, because I think it's so important that people understand that usually projects of this size go to the BC Utilities Commission, Commission, and this is an organization that is set up to specifically to review these types of big projects, like for the review government spending and all that. So, to circumnavigate around that, they basically have decided they're just not going to have the Utilities Commission look at Site C, and then they had their own independent reviewers to look at this. So, I mean, what you've done is so important for the public, I think, to know that when there's a political agenda, let's be fair, that the Liberals want to see this dam built, perhaps they're not doing the math in a way that we might be comfortable with, and we may not be able to have a chance to find out until after the fact, basically.
As the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador found out on Friday, that their hydroelectric development is now $4 billion over budget and is been described by the president, CEO of the hydro utility in Newfoundland and Labrador as a boondoggle.
Now, has anybody actually provided the real numbers with a ledger and say we have to remove this much earth, we have to build this concrete structure? Do they have a breakdown?
I believe they have a breakdown for some of the generalities within that domain. The problem becomes that you also have the government boasting in December 2014 that this project will cost $8.8 billion.
Yeah.
And that they have put in a 5% management contingency. They've put in some other contingencies for unforeseen issues. So they have about $1.1 billion in contingency, just in case they go over budget.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny because Frank Margotan, who was responsible for building the Sea to Sky and the Portman Bridge, the government first estimated those two projects together would cost $2.2 billion.
Yeah.
They ended up costing $4.1 billion.
Just about double.
Just about double, and you certainly double the amount that BC Hydro has put aside as contingency for Site
Well,
C.
you know, it's quite remarkable because, you know, I'm a contractor, a little contractor, and I do business all the time, and people ask me what it's going to cost, and I tell them, and most of the time, it does cost that. Not every time, but basically, you try as hard as you can to get the scope of the work, and but to always be double, like, what is going on here? Like, really and truly, like, would the public really respond terribly if they said, okay, we want to build this dam, it's going to cost $16 billion. The public would probably yawn and just change the channel. But they feel that they have to underestimate, appears to me, and then somehow it gets justified in the future.
I think they lowball it to get political buy-in.
Yeah.
And one of the favorite phrases the government has is on time and on budget. And I've suggested that their new slogan should be late and over budget. Because,
as usual,
you know, the way they do it, quite frankly, is sneaky. What they do is they put out a lowball effort to get buy-in, and then they turn around and revise the budget along the way so that by the time it's finished,
yeah,
it's technically on budget.
Yeah, it's just that we've added all these other features or whatever.
Now again, just to sort of bring our old boys network back into focus, Frank Margotan, in charge of the Sea to Sky, who did he have to go to get approvals signed for cost overruns? Gary Webster.
Oh, well, that's it's very handy because they know each other and they, you know, basically they know how to handle this sort of stuff. Dermod, it's so interesting. I know you're going to continue working on this. The public really needs to know this information. And really a pleasure to talk to you today and hope to have you back soon and we'll continue this discussion.